Are they? Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. We've begun. We've begun because, well, we're late because of the way the power is. Hello to Sean. Hello to Crocus. I'm going to just call you Crocus now. Who asked me a brilliant question on the LinkedIn, but he's going to talk to us about his drone light shows, I'm sure. But he asked me what was the biggest BS thing that's come and gone in the time we were running SES News? And I really don't know. There's been so many. There's been so many that I can't nail it down to a particular one. So I'll give everyone just a few seconds to think about that, and then we'll come back to that question, see if we can come to a resolution on that. But I'd like to start before we talk about the light shows with this hurricane. And he's gone. Well, there we are, because we're not going to
he doesn't have a
Sorry, this hurricane. Sorry, mate. This hurricane and incident and prosecution. Am I just a complete duffer to think you just shouldn't be doing it? Because I've seen so much traffic today that revolves around, oh, it'll be all right. What harm could it have done? It only bounced off it. I mean,
it's really shocked me. Yeah, it's really shocked me actually, because and when I did my show on it last night, I kind of started it with, obviously we're at the start point that everybody agrees this is a stupid thing to do, and we shouldn't be sharing the airspace between these particular types of aircraft and drones, and temporary FRZs are up, etc., that type of thing. I assume we're at a base level of agreement, and I've been shocked particularly on social media, but I think perhaps it might be a symptom of the anti-drone police type of sentiment out there, as in a lot of the Facebook groups, a lot of the social media groups, they're very anti people coming on and saying, oh, you shouldn't do that, and quite rightly picking on everybody's post, saying, oh, how high were you flying with that drone? And I can understand that would get very annoying happening all the time, but I think perhaps it's one of the legacies of that now people are sort of actually is that really and I'm up for any debate and hearing from any sort of side of things, but that to me is a stretched a little bit too far, just personally though.
Yeah, I think it's also a fact that there's no respect for these regulations in some circles because the regulations are ridiculously over the top. So as I've said so many times, if you want compliance, you must gain the respect of the people whose behavior you're trying to alter. And the regulators, without exception, have not taken that step to gain the respect. They have dictated things without proper consultation. They talk to people. In America, the consultative committees are entirely commercially based. They're not going to get the respect they need to get compliance, and that is a huge hurdle. Although, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I do agree with that, and I do agree in terms of things like the VLOS AMC and things starting to lose great sections of the hobby, especially in terms of their compliance. But for this kind of thing, where it's such a basic part of legislation, do not endanger other aircraft, I was just very surprised that it wasn't really a unanimous, because to me that isn't about respecting regulation, etc. It's this is an absolute safety issue. So yeah, it did surprise me.
Yeah, I think it's pushback though. I mean, people are so pissed off, excuse my French, we're demonetized now. They're so annoyed by the level of restriction that they are now going too far and basically trying to justify things that we all know are patently unsafe and not right. But because, it's the regulator coming down, we've got to be anti-regulation, anti-everything. And people tend to think, oh, you're anti-regulation, Bruce. No, I'm anti-bad regulation. There's a huge difference. And I'm very much pro-safety. But I think that when regulators go too far, they get exactly the wrong result because they lose that following, that respect, that regard for the rules that are essential to preserve safety. And I think too many regulators have done that, and that the pushback's coming, and it's going to be very, very hard for them to cope with that because they're not prepared for it. Not willing to acknowledge that, oh, maybe we got something wrong. Maybe it's time to back up a bit. So they'll have to be pushed.
Are you not going a bit too far with that? Wasn't this just somebody that thought, I know what great thing to do would be pop up and look at the hurricane from my drone without any thought to the regulations, because they've probably never read.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, we've got the regulators are telling us, oh, don't worry, register, because we're going to use that connection to educate the people. Registration will solve everything because it's only a way we can register. In America, you got the trust exam, you got DEMARAs in the UK. these education policies are not reaching the people they need to reach, because this guy probably did it out of ignorance. So where is the effective education? How are we going to reach these people who are the problem element? You can regulate the snot out of law-abiding people, and it's not going to affect the people who are the problem. All you're doing is penalizing those who are not the issue, not the problem. And I point out, for example, the hobby of flying radio-controlled model aircraft is now being hugely penalized because of the actions of people who don't fly radio-controlled model aircraft. How fair is that?
From my perspective, I just think the guy's a knob. But anyone who engages another aircraft, knob. There's an awful lot. The trouble is that of the 95% of law-abiding registered flyers, you'll always find there's 5% of people who have means to buy these things on eBay, unregistered, fly them, and it's one of those things. If we allow people to buy these things, they will go and do stupid things with them. Not everybody, obviously, but people will always push the boundaries, and people will always be stupid, because there is always that the standard distribution of stupidity is quite is very well known. But it's just one of those things. I really struggle with keeping up. I have a Mavic Pro from some years ago. I've got a ME2 that actually we've loaned out to the local Bay Rescue Service, so they can fly something thermal. But just trying to keep up with what is all the different categories and all the different rules and regulations. It is a minefield. But I can understand from a regulator's point of view, it's really difficult to try and keep everyone flying when people are flying different things with different skill set levels. And there's a hurricane at 2,000 feet. I mean, how dare it be there,
Yeah, I was a bit lower than that. And I think, and I want to probe this. Was this the same fly through? It was certainly the same event as the Lancaster video surfaced from.
It was the
same event.
It was the Buxton Carnival in July.
Oh, was that? Well, maybe I'm wrong then. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
June,
it wasn't.
June or July, actually. Sorry, but yeah, it was in Buxton, and it was just the Hurricane that had visited this one.
But I think that Lancaster event is part of this, in that there wouldn't have been a great deal of evidence other than the video to go after somebody for a prosecution. But for this one, if it was a DJI drone of any sort, there it all would have been on the card. So if you wanted a firm prosecution, so I suspect I asked Richard on as well. Maybe you'll come along. I don't know, because ex-CA prosecuting man would probably have an idea of where this is going to go, because people have noticed. But one thing it has done, as I wander off topic a little bit, it has focus the minds a little bit of people when they've realized there's potentially, I think, isn't it 10 years or something like that?
I think up to I know the primary one of endangering aircraft was up to 5 years. It has been put up to the Crown Court, so that obviously gives them a bit more clout.
People saying separate incident in the comments, so it's my bad for conflating the two, but I do bet they had a look at that FPV one and thought, can we do it? And then this next one that occurred, well, that's enough. I think
there's a difference as well, though, isn't there? Because I think proximity was extreme as far
apparently
as apparently so.
Yes.
Yeah. The video that I saw, again, lenses can do all sorts of things, but it really was literally off the wingtip.
Was it?
Whereas the Lancaster
I didn't see the video.
Whereas the Lancaster one was kind of, there's definite distance there, and it's debatable, and actually, it's a silly thing to do, but there was a lot of debate with the Lancaster one. Whereas I think with this one, it's a lot more. It apparently is a lot more cut and dry.
Allegedly,
if this was 60 years ago and that was a 109, nobody would care.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's just true. That's very true. Yes, but I haven't seen the video.
That's different when you're choosing to buy a drone and then go and fly it somewhere, and there's I don't think you can compare someone choosing to fly a drone to a Messerschmitt coming after him.
Yeah. But I want to throw this back at DJI. Because they enforce geofencing. You can't fly, they have these exclusion areas. You can't fly your drone near an airport and things like that. They build it into the technology. They prohibit you from flying your drone near an airport. Safety, they say. Now, this was a case of someone flying BVLOS, and I've said it many times before. Why did DJI not enforce a reasonable range? They say you can fly over 4 kilometers away. In this promotional information, why don't they say, well, I'm sorry, but in the UK, with a Mini 3, effectively it's going to be 100 meters, and we're going to enforce that because they can do that. Why geofence when they're not doing the other stuff?
Although, of course, there's the difference. The 100 meters is the AMC, whereas I think you could fly a little bit further and still be under legislation, but you just have to be willing to stand up in court and defend yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but you can make it even then like 500 meters.
Yeah,
no one can
no,
fly
absolutely.
Because let's face it, the geofencing isn't exactly aligned with the regulations in respect to distances. If I use my drone, I can fly it if I'm 1 kilometer from our airfield, but our regulations say you have to be 4 kilometers from our airfield. So, but they've shown that they stand up and say, we are supporting safety. We're doing this in the name of safety. Well, this incident clearly proves that maybe it's time they put some distance restrictions on the operation of their drones and stop trying to sell them on the basis you can fly for 4 kilometers. It's no problem.
Yeah, because one of the things I noticed with the initial VLOS video that I did that had tens of thousands of views, that the amount of comments of people that didn't realize VLOS was even a thing, let alone that it was, orientation of aircraft and things. There were so many comments in there of, hang on a minute, I've just bought this DJI.
6 kilometers.
100% agree with what Bruce is saying. They're buying these drones. They're seeing on the box goes, as you're saying, Gary, 6-8 kilometers. Do an FCC hack, it will go even further. And so they're assuming because they can. Although there is always, of course, the argument to throw back that just because my BMW can do 155 miles an hour, it's limited to that, doesn't mean I'm going to. There are still laws, which again comes back to communication and education, doesn't it? And the fact that, as Bruce was saying, they're clearly not reaching everybody. But you could argue enforcement's working because they've obviously got this guy, etc. But of course, it was only because he was stupid enough to post it online, of course, as well. So
but then everybody's that stupid. Sorry, Chris, after you.
I was going to say possibly not as stupid as the guy who got prosecuted up in Barrow after his drone fell out of the sky over the nuclear submarine pens.
Who then went over the bridge.
Then went knocked on security's door and asked for his drone back.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was a flyaway, wasn't it? That was a return to home error. So I'm not saying it was right or wrong. What I'm saying is that incident was because of his bad return to home setup and his bad fail-safe setup. If that had been set up correctly, it would never have done what it did.
Right.
It was a brilliant video.
Yeah,
it went over the bridge. It was brilliant.
Here's the bizarre thing. There are so many videos out there of people flying BVLOS and going so far away that they've chosen this one video to go after one person where they are more than certain that they can actually nail them.
Well, I was
that's the interesting bit.
That if CAA legal ring you up and there's a meeting that doesn't involve biscuits and you have got to take your hat off, then they've probably got a reason to get you. And if you reach that point, I was told that they don't call unless they're pretty certain they're going to get a conviction. And that's, that's what's happened. Now, back to Patrick in the comments mentions the education piece. Another thing that's thrown up, I see people talking about, is somebody mentioned NOTAMs, and then people say, what's this NOTAM things? What are we going to worry about this? What's all this nonsense? Have you looked at that GMO thing? Look at all that nonsense. Who cares about cranes? Who cares about this? Who cares about that? So that's kind of what I'm alluding to there is that's like a missing piece of. There's two sides to this. There's the missing piece of the education thing, because NOTAMs are a bit esoteric, really, if you haven't been in the world of flying. But also, yes, I know.
NOTAM clutter is a bugbear of all pilots.
Yes,
commercial pilots will tell you that going to, especially if coming back from on a foreign leg, just trying to discover NOTAMs that are relevant to you is ridiculous. And from the drone light show perspective, we have to NOTAM that our client got really annoyed that the local rag picked up that the NOTAM was going to be issued 5 days ahead, and therefore they knew that there was going to be a drone light show here, and the client wanted it as a surprise for their customers, etc. And that's just one of the joys of legislation. But the NOTAM clutter is something that I think you look on Sky Demon, and it is just incredible the amount of extra pink circles that are suddenly cropping up for people doing aerial work. And you sit there and start to wonder about actually, are we going to end up with NOTAM fatigue caused by drones? Yes, I think we are.
Use drone assist. Everyone that's flying a drone in the UK, get drone assist. It shows the relevant NOTAMs.
Yeah,
and it saves you. For the hobby flyer, drone assist is the one to use, because pro users like most of us here would probably check on NOTAM info where there is NOTAM overload.
Yeah.
Okay. It's filtering all that is NOTAM overload. This is what you want to be using in the UK if you fly. Use drone assist. It will tell you about airspace. It will tell you about NOTAMs that are specifically for us. So it's like right now, there's a NOTAM. Where's it gone? So there's a NOTAM near me at the minute, and it is, funny enough, when I find it, I've lost it.
Over your house tonight.
But it's interesting that Chris highlighted that it kind of can be commercial information that can get out into the world beforehand. All the drone delivery trials. Well,
so that's a UAS swarm that's going on, and that's just around the corner from me, and that's going to happen in the next few days. But yeah, you can't hide if you fly a swarm, because the CA have made it an absolute requirement. Doesn't matter if you're flying 4 or 500, it has to be NOTAM'd.
It's non-standard flight.
Fair enough.
But I was actually looking from the GA pilot's perspective, or from the commercial pilot's perspective, that if you're using something like Sky Demon, etc., it's suddenly got a lot more clutter on it, and there is no differentiation between ultra low airspace on a pictorial representation of a NOTAM and upper airspace. It's just a NOTAM. It's a circle or a box. It's a polygon somewhere on a map that you can have to hover over and digest it. And most of the time, you're going to go, oh, model aircraft flying, drone light show flying, drones flying. You're going to ignore it. So I think there will be some pushback eventually from the GA upwards community.
And even as you say, the commercial drone operators as well have got a lot to take in. So perhaps that suggests that we should be moving towards, or having a lot more thought about how these things are displayed, what wording is there, how it can, we're in a. It's come from a teleprinter world, hasn't it? Where someone like me 30 years ago would have drawn a line on them, or would have drawn them all on a map, and the pilots would have come in and looked at them. So it's not really, it's on drone assist and a few other things, but it's not changed to consider technology that's available. Maybe they should only, I don't know, on Sky Demon, if you put your track and your altitude or expected altitude on the track, does it pop up all the low stuff and all the high stuff? Does it change it appropriately?
And it's horrible. I absolutely hate Sky Demon with a passion.
I don't know. It seems quite nice.
For flying GA aircraft and above, it's it has its uses. It's horses for courses. I would argue with the drone assist app, you don't get the local authority bylaws on there, so you can look on that and think it's all all fine above, and then
although the bylaws aren't obviously an airspace issue, are they? So I suppose that's why they've got some ground hazards on there, but obviously it's not
especially interesting bylaws out there. And this is something that Richard Ryan and myself so like Epping Forest has got a bylaw preventing the flight of a drone over the forest, and you can actually, as a local authority, you can actually apply for a bylaw that specifies where and when you can fly. And as Richard alluded to a few weeks back on here, that the local authorities don't really understand airspace.
No, that's right. Yeah,
and
I think putting too many ground attempting to do that, because then you've also got how enforceable is that particular bylaw, how enforceable if it's a PSPO, how enforceable is that, etc. And I think drone assist needs to be certainty. And anything that goes on there has to be a 100% certainty that the person can count on the information.
Yeah.
And rather than being almost turning into a gatekeeping app type thing, I think it needs to stay there. And the second version, hence the video on my channel a couple of months ago, and we've got one coming up to show the updated update. But the new version of Drone Assist is even sexier actually, and it does have that facility to be able to, yeah, indeed, that facility to be able to simplify the readout and things even further to give you the data you actually want, which is quite exciting.
Yes,
I do need to get out more.
Yeah, I mean, and we must remember that people have to be responsible for their actions. We get in a car, we drive, we are responsible for doing that. You get on your push bike, you cycle, you're responsible. You fly your drone, you should be responsible. It's down to you to do the checks, and a lot of common sense needs applying. Can you fly here? Well, let me check the airspace. Well, yes, I can. Landowners, can you take off from here? Here's a bylaw. You've just got to do some very basic checks, and they're not hard to do. There was one.
But sorry, go on, Mark. Go on.
Well, I know people have been audited by the CAA, and that's when they invite you in for a chat as an operator, and then they go through things. And I know people have had that, and they said to the CAA, "Well, what is the due? If I want to check for landowners' permissions, then and it's public land, how do I do that?" And the CAA's response to them, as they told me, was, "Well, basically, if you go to a council website, you go into the search, you put SUA at the time, it was small unmanned aircraft or model aircraft or drone or whatever. If their website doesn't show you anything, you are safe to assume there's no bylaw in place, because if there is a bylaw, it will tell you." And while that sounds crazy, that was what I was relayed the information. So if you went to Bristol's website, council, they will tell you what parks you can fly in and what parks you cannot. See, good councils have this information available to you. But of course, trying to find out who owns a very specific piece of land can be very hard as well. So
in the UK, you just go to the land registry site and pay £3, and
But that's considered going too far, and that sounds crazy. Don't get me wrong; that can sound crazy, but it's one of those interesting things.
Yeah, and you also have to factor in, obviously, that we're talking that's talking about sort of commercial ops, as we all used to call it, but it's there are far more flights happening in terms of the hobby, far more flights, and the check on land and things like that is the benchmark for them to check is far lower. So you're not going to get hobbyists every time they want to go and fly their drone going on to land registry to download a plan, etc. So but it is something which needs but that's really where I've seen the most from my audience, the most pushback is actually from takeoff and landing stuff, until the VLOS, of course, AMC, until that's a seismic point. But yeah, it is an interesting one. But I do think that things like Drone Assist need to stay that to have that level of certainty on there. And I mean, you had Drone Prep for a while there. They had the you could click on a parcel of land and it would pop up and it would tell you if that person had a policy and that type of thing, which I think had some good. There was a good possible foundation there, which would have been very useful for people, because if there is something there, people do want to know about it, of course.
What I find, this is all very interesting. In fact, I was thinking the other day, I was watching the FAA's advice to law enforcement, their information for law enforcement, and I realized we don't actually need drone rules. We don't need any drone rules, because as the FAA says, you can do them for endangerment, you can do them for trespass, we've got rules in every other aspect which cover virtually everything that the drone rules are supposed to cover. If you endanger somebody, it's endangerment. If you damage their property, that's damaging someone's property. There are criminal and civil actions available for everything you can do wrong with a drone. So why do we need another set of rules, which just become increasingly complex, obscure, contradictory, when the laws of the land already have coverage of everything that you can do with a drone that might be bad? It's like, why reinvent this other layer?
My boys left a little red plate in here, so that's the red card for this. That's common sense, Bruce, as you know, not allowed on this red card. So there we are. Yes. Why? But no, I suppose you could apply that to all aspects of life, though, couldn't you? I mean, it's so many things that would apply.
Yeah,
to.
but you certainly, it certainly feels more tangible when you get to a point of, you know, documents like CAP 722 coming out with contradictions in the same paragraph, and and hundreds and hundreds of pages, and you know, God bless Callum for all of the work he's done on my channel in terms of trying to communicate and trying to connect. But you know, when an answer is, well, there's hundreds of pages and there's going to be errors, then you know that to me shows that the system itself possibly has, you know, too much regulation, too many things on top of things.
You mean like the drone fire near the hurricane made an error? The CAA set the benchmark. Errors are acceptable, so let's just let him go on his way. You can't be hypocritical.
No, an extreme comparison, but yes, I take it.
You take the CAA's CAP 722 with all those errors. If we were to submit an OSC and it has all those errors, they throw that back in our, you know, they come up with an oversight report, and then you spend a month trying to fix it. But the CA, the rules have got so complicated now. If the CA cannot follow their own guidance and rules, it shows how bad the regulation has become. They have demonstrated their own goal, because they've gone, well, these are the rules. Oh wait, and then bring out all these caps, and there's so many errors across them all. It's like I can't follow it anymore. It's just goo now, not my brain.
Your regulators are incriminating themselves, basically. They drop themselves in it. They've got so far down the rabbit hole that they can't keep track of what they're doing. The FAA is the same. They can't even tell me what the rules mean. And they're the other that make them. It's like an interesting we've got, and the CAA, the rules are contradictory, so they don't know what they mean. We've reached the point now where the regulations are becoming, as we've seen with the hurricane thing, they're so complex, so difficult to understand, have so many nuances that they no longer are fit for purpose.
That's why I'm not understanding things. How's that difficult to understand? Here is a fate. Here is a hurricane coming at 12 o'clock. It will fly through at low level. Clear. But if you look at the rest of it, I mean, if you look at the rest of it, though, there are so many instances now where they are contradictory and so forth. And so we've reached the point where the rules are no longer fit for purpose. We need to wind things back. We need to simplify and be consistent, not only with the rules, but with their enforcement. Because in America at the moment, it looks like the FAA are not going to consistently enforce the rule they've passed. And if a rule isn't going to be enforced consistently, it speaks to the need for that rule. Either you need a rule and you enforce it, or you don't need it and you don't enforce it.
Yeah. Interestingly, the US is a really good example of compliance and in terms of losing the lower end of the regulated community, as in the hobby, as in lower end of you know, requirements. From the point of view, and this is where I fear we're starting to tread in that sort of ground here in the UK, because they brought trust in. And the ripples across the hobby channels in America was actually quite profound. Everyone, oh my God, what is this trust certificate? And what do we have to do? And when do we have to do it? And then the FAA came out and confirmed that they're not going to be enforcing the trust certificate at the moment. So they made all this fantastic ground, and people were like, oh my God, I need to have this certificate. But then they say, oh, actually, we're not actively going to enforce it for a while.
But they have that. Well, no, that actually the FAA haven't. A local council has, hasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Or council's probably the wrong word. But
which to be fair, that would probably be the first thing on my defence. If I was that person, I would say, well, actually, here's a memo from the FAA to say they themselves aren't enforcing it.
So the thing is, I don't think local authorities can enforce federal rules.
They can find you guilty of local ordinance because you haven't stuck to something you should be doing under federal. Because there's actually been a few drone pilots caught. Yeah, there's been a few drone pilots that they felt they've proven they've contravened federal regulations, but they've prosecuted them under local safety ordinance.
Yeah, but whenever regulation is not enforced consistently, it opens the door to corruption and bad judgments and things. You know, you can't do it.
I think for me, the key word is fun. Because an awful lot of drones are sold in shops, and parents buy their kids' drones on the grounds they might be fun. And you open this sort of can of worms. As soon as you open that box, most of the packaging, you know, for cheap toy drones, you know, that doesn't actually mention anything about the rules at all. And I think, you know, when you've got to balance that for like the model aircraft guys, they're flying for fun. The average hobbyist is flying for fun, and then you come down with this huge sort of structure of endless laws above it, and you're just opening a can of worms as soon as you open the £20 made in China drone box.
But do you all remember there used to be, well, obviously the guys not in the UK won't remember, there used to be a shop called Maplins here in the UK.
Oh yeah.
So Maplins, I
see your Maplin and I raise you Tandy.
Well, I will raise you. The CAA used to have a leaflet that was printed out and was available to anyone, any company that was selling drones, and it got put with the drone. So Maplins used to have this leaflet from the CAA that told them the rules and everything. And it used to be Maplins, Currys, everyone used to have this leaflet. That disappeared a few years ago now, but I think it's 29 it appeared, and it disappeared. Flying with, so it had something similar, Bruce, how to fly, where to fly, the basic rules that appeared, and then it disappeared. And the minute's been around for a while.
It probably disappeared because Cap 722 got so overwhelmingly complex that there wasn't a sheet of paper big enough to print it on.
Yeah,
and you said it ended up being bigger than the box with the drone in it.
But it even had the website, CAA drone, whatever, but all of that's gone. So you go to Argos, you buy a drone, you get your leaflet, and you get your drone. That's all gone now.
Network remote ID would fix this. You couldn't take off until you're absolutely doing the right thing. I think it's a great idea.
What's remote ID, Bruce? I don't understand.
No, network remote ID. That's with the drone. You can pay to fly, mate. Pay to fly. People aren't going to waste their money.
That's what's coming. That's what's coming. I'm quickly trying to find the example at AM because I think Dovran said a fantastic thing there. ChatGPT could absolutely ace a trust test. And I wanted to see if he's right. Is that make a great video? Let's see if chat
Open book test or a joke, really. Open book test or a joke. It's just your ability to read something, and you don't necessarily need to learn anything. You're just copying from whatever.
The fact they put the answers in the same website, it's the same as the UK Flyer ID. They're more getting you to sign that you know the rules. So if you have an active Flyer ID, it means you pass that many. So it's actually not necessarily just education, but liability, isn't it, really? Which I think the trust is all about as well.
Yeah, because you declared that you've done the stuff. And I took an open test, book test in Australia, and it was one of the hardest ones I've ever taken, actually, because every book was there, and they were huge.
And it was all written in Australian instead of English.
It was all written, exactly. They were up, so I had to turn my head around. But the wording in it was very, very, very exact. You had to have a pretty good command of English, and that was in Australia. Imagine that. It has, the education piece is missing. We've all around the world. We've got to pay a registration fee of some amount. They really ought to be putting some of that, at very least, back into some education.
The thing is, look at what happens with driver's license, regular car driver's license. You have to be. Ever since I got my license, driver's license. How many times the law has changed, and it is my obligation to know the changes of the rules. Come on, the other day I was on the road and I saw a new traffic sign. I was looking at that. What do they mean with that? So I had to go and find out what that stupid new traffic sign was. Come on, they're making it the same as driving a car. So with drones it will be the same. You take your pilot's license for drones, you're entitled to drive a specific type of drones, and you have to be on notice to know the changes of the rules. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
Louis, you have to go and drive in London where you will follow the road signs. If you're not careful, just taking the wrong left turn and not reading that sign as you pass it will get you a nice fine.
How can anyone afford to drive in London anyway?
Yeah,
I was doing work for someone, and I came out of London with about £135 worth of fines.
AAM will fix that. AAM will solve that problem.
Sorry. The good joke that we can throw at that is, come on, what would you expect for driving on the wrong side of the roads? So that's it.
But Louis, my point is that if the regulators don't know what the rules mean, how are you as a user supposed to stay up to date with the rules? How can you interpret them if the regulator can't?
Yeah, it's the same as cars. Come on. I'm
Well,
sure
road rules
if
are
I
usually
go
pretty
to
clear.
if I go to a traffic cop, he won't know all the rules that are on the driving codes. It's our obligation to be informed.
Well, that should provide us with the resources. You can get a book of the road code, which in New Zealand, which tells you all the road rules. Very simple, clearly laid out. It's very simple. There's no ambiguity. It's easy to understand. When it comes to the aviation regulations, if the regulator can't tell you what the rules mean, then you're never going to be able to be totally compliant and up to date.
I agree with that because
changing your
my argument for that point as well is that with the new Cap 722 before the recent amendments, you could read on one page that you can fly over people with a 500-gram drone with an A2C of C, and you would stop reading because you've now found out what you can do. It's not until the next page where it contradicts that and tells you that you can't fly over people with a 500-gram drone with an A2C of C. So in actual fact, that person will have taken the time to read the regulation, will have taken it in properly, will have stopped reading this 90-page document at the page where it's told him the information, and will go out and fly his drone against regulation. So I think you know, and I am Mr. Pro Reg, you know, I'm Mr. Pro Flight Safety, but I do think there is a line when there's, you know, errors and contradictions and things that causes confusion within these documents. And I think we have to have a higher level of peer review of these documents before they go out, so that they make sense, so they read like a proper document.
Can we get?
Many times, I'm going back to the road codes. Have you any of you tried to read the entirety of the road codes?
No, but
I read it every day.
You can read the road code and it won't tell you one thing and then another thing in the following. I would assume.
Yeah,
I would
sometimes
like
there are contradictions and things that even and I know that because my daughter is at driving school now. Oh God, but even things that are on the current road code are subject to interpretation of the law. So
yes,
yeah, which I
it's
agree with
same.
you, and we are the same. But unfortunately, on this situation, I'm the same as you and Bruce. I didn't say unfortunately, but that was the wrong wording. But I agree with both sides, because yes, I fully support good regulation, and I support the fact that people should be responsible and find out what they're supposed to do. But equally, if there is a document that can be pulled apart in 5 minutes by a YouTuber that's been issued by a regulator, I don't see that as good enough, and I don't see that as good enough for someone who is a hobbyist who is trying to find out the information and trying to be responsible. And that's what frustrates, annoys me, is that when people, you know, there's always the people that are going to just say screw the rules and they're just going to do what they want. That's fine. You and those people you're probably never going to reach. But what frustrates me is that when you have people who want to follow the rules and who are responsible and follow YouTube channels and that type of thing and watch videos and want to know what's going on, and those people can find it confusing and those people can fall down because of the way the regulator has made errors in a document. That's what frustrates me personally. So that's why I sort of sit both sides of that fence at the moment.
Can I say, right, I would love to rewind the rules back to Article 166 and 167. So I think only Gary here might be aware of 166 and 167. I don't know how long everyone else has been flying drones, but I would love to rewind the rules back to Articles 166 and 167 and the CAP 722 and CAP 658 at the time. 658 was the hobby one. So 658 was the hobby one, because that was really good.
Yes.
658 was really good. And then 722 at the time was really clear and good. And you just had the two caps, you had the two articles, which did become 94 and 95 in the end. So 166 and 167 became 94 and 95 in the end. But
that death toll is unsustainable.
Yeah, but you have to remember that no one's, the great thing is still, and I hate saying this, no one has yet, just a quick check everyone please, no one's been killed by a multi-rotor, have they, by commercial ops recently?
No.
Not for days around here.
So the safety record is still there. The safety record is still good. You know, I'm not saying it's perfect because there's been incidents, but thankfully we've not had a major accident. Why have the rules just become so bad? That's the biggest concern. You know,
it's because they're driven by hysteria and things that they're not driven by risk assessments. They're not driven by logic. They're driven by hysteria, political pressure, and public pressure. This is the problem. We're not coming from the right perspective to create these rules. There's no justification for many of the rules. And the justifications that were first offered, they're going to bring down airliners, have proven to be invalid. But we're not winding back those rules to take into account the stuff we've learned over the last 10 years. That's unacceptable.
What's really crazy?
Sorry, Mark. It's also a matter of whoever comes next thinks that he can do a better job of rewriting the previous things. So at the regulators, if they change someone or someone new comes up and will add some more wokeism to the rules, they'll do it. So it's only a matter of who comes next will do a better job. Rewrite to make it more clear, more inclusive, more friendly, and they will rewrite what was clear just for the sake of it. They don't have to look at previous experiences or track records.
In which case, we don't have to follow the rules.
I can do better, and they go out and do it, and that's it.
Yeah. We also have to accept, though, that with drones and you know, whether it's the swarms that Crocker's dealing with, and or the, you know, the Mini 3 all the way down to the hobbyist, that we are in a regulatory space which is very much subject to change because of technology and because of future flight, etc. And I think that we have to bear that in mind. Well, yeah. Well, it's there. It exists. And the fact that we have to share this airspace with everybody in the future is going to make this a very bumpy ride for the next 10, 15 years. And I think we have to accept that, because it's not going to go away, because they think there are many, not just a golden goose. They think there's many golden gooses down that road.
Yeah.
But it's not going to go away. So we have to try and survive within the environment, essentially. It's my opinion.
Trouble is that we could atrophy and die before that 10-year period is up. I mean,
absolutely.
Now, please do me a favor of thinking of my daily fight, where I don't have to deal with one CAA. I have to deal with 35 countries of CAAs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, that's it's not only in UK or New Zealand or Portugal or US. If you go out of these countries, everything is completely different. Come on, from stupid rules that if you have to be a drone pilot, you have to present a military certificate that you served the armed forces. Things like this,
I
that
know
you go out
countries like
and
that.
read them and you say, what? And those are the craziest rules. So these rules are even good in UK and EU or whatever. At least they don't ask some weird things. Yeah.
The segregation, not integration thing that you pulled up from Jason before is always an interesting one, because I feel like we as drone pilots take ownership of the sub 400 airspace a lot, but yet we get upset when other people try to block us from using it. And I think the integration argument is lost, because airspace is open to all. And if we can find safe ways for everybody to coexist, then we should
that's the problem. We can't find safe ways at the moment. We don't have a reliable.
I was about to bring up Altitude Angels. You know, if that kind of thing works, then, you know, I still fear that in terms of scalability. But if that kind of thing works, then actually you could have the commercial drone flights and the hobbyist flying his drone and not even know that that's going on. If we can find, it's a big if.
I'm constantly astounded at the the comments you've seen on the social medias of people saying, "Oh, I was flying along at 150 feet, and an Air Force thing whizzed under me. They flew over my farm at whatever." So, well, why, as you say, as a community, we do seem to have this weird ownership thought of the first 400 feet that need to. The missing part, the start of making it safety or safety, is just education. It's just saying, guys, there are other aircraft about. They may be landing. It might be a glider, might be a balloon, might be a microlight.
But the thing we have to point out, though, is that we're operating in that area. So it'd be holding to other operators who don't normally operate in that area to be aware of the risk profile of coming down that low. Why should we have to bear all the responsibility and all the risk when we've been doing this? And even if they said, like, okay, models and drones, 200 feet max, and in commercial drone traffic, 200 to 400, that's going to provide stratification that will give the drone delivery people, while they play with their toys, plenty of scope to come and go without having to worry about model aircraft and things. And it gives the model aircraft people enough room to continue their hobby without endangering anyone else. The thing is that I've yet to see any GA regulation altered to reflect the increased risk, as we're being told exists, related to drone operation in the 0 to 400 foot airspace. Why don't we do that? Why don't we share the burden of responsibility? Why is it entirely on our shoulders?
Well, but I don't think the argument is of the future flight brigade and UTM and of the sensible ones. It isn't actually that there won't be onus on everybody, and actually part of what they're trying to trial with the Out of the Angel things, I'm not their poster boy obviously, is actually finding that and actually finding where that line is. So I completely agree with you, but I just think the segregation versus integration argument is gone. Because it was never there in the first place.
I think it was. I draw the analogy: we don't put pedestrians on a motorway; we build a footpath, and that's the safest way to do it. And where they cross, where cars cross the footpath.
But you do put push bikes and motorbikes with cars and lorries. So you.
And that's a silly thing to do. Look how many people get killed on bikes, hit by trucks. We have cycle lanes. No, you ever seen cycle lanes? And we have bus lanes. We have bus lanes.
Hence, we need the caveat that it must be a safe integration.
Yes. We're stratifying at all levels.
Trying to keep a drone pilot who's flying for fun under 400 feet is a bit like asking a cyclist to stay out of the bus lane. They've all got the potential to be in the other lane.
Potential.
Well, here's the crazy thing, and this is important. Manned aviation has to remain 500 feet from uninvolved, from people and buildings.
Any structure which may contain human beings.
However, in the countryside, that does mean you can find microlights and other aircraft at 400 feet, because if there's nothing but open countryside, they can actually come down. There's no rule that says they can't. So they are allowed to come a bit lower. So just people need to bear that in mind. The 500 feet rule will keep them high above cities and villages and towns.
A bit higher over villages and towns. A bit higher.
Yes, because they need the glide profile to get past. But basically, I think it's 1,000 feet, isn't it, minimum? And they have to be higher at the bigger populated area.
Yes,
I think. Yeah, off the top of my head.
1,000 feet off the top of my head. Again, it's one of those great imperial up and down and metric left and right. So,
what's that in pounds?
Oh,
33 and a
third.
So, I mean, they can come lower in open countryside. So, just be aware.
I'm on the old rule 5 is now Sierra 5005, and we have in the UK we have ORSA 1494, which allows the legacy rule that if there's no habitable building within 500 foot of slant range, you can go down as low as you like. And it's also there for not only for microlighters to enter our 400 foot airspace. No, it's there for people doing practice force landings, etc.
Yes.
So it's part of exercise 17. It's part of the skills test, and so aircraft will come down. There is legitimate argument for it, but there is also it doesn't actually happen as often as you might think. You're more likely to find a paramotor or a paraglider there in that airspace, silently floating around the place than you are a microlight or GA Part 21 aircraft. So it does happen, But you know, I fly along when I'm flying GA, and I'm, you know, I bimble along at 2,000 feet and DA42 and go, oh, well, you know, there shouldn't be any drones above 400 feet, and that's my sort of natural sort of 400-foot level that I think of. Having said that, I've got a few private jet pilots, friends of mine, who, you know, they've climbed out of Farnborough at 3,500 feet and found a drone just up there, and you know, it's like,
what sort of drone?
Well, that's interesting.
Recreational. How can you see that in a jet aircraft climbing out? How can you see one?
Well, I can find you the phone footage of their takeoff if you like. But that was an Airprox report about a year.
We know how valid most of those are.
Yes, and Farnborough, I don't know. I'll tell you off air.
Farnborough changed all their airspace and pissed everybody off recently.
They have.
Well,
yeah, there's a huge air grab there, isn't there? I mean, it's basically Southampton across, isn't it, now?
Yeah, absolutely. You can.
And I'm horrified to hear that Rule 5 is no more. The world's gone mad. The world's gone mad. How can you get rid of Rule 5? That's
it's just been replaced. It's
I know, Sarah exemptions in Class G, as the LinkedIn user tells us. That doesn't sound as cool as Rule 5. Anyway.
just to end on my rant and to clarify,
yes.
because I know we didn't, this wasn't the angle of the hurricane story sort of led to this, but I'm more talking about, we need to stop talking about segregation and integration, etc., because we actually need to pick our fights. And I think the biggest fight that we have from the RC hobby up to lower end commercial user is preventing lots more stupid regulations coming in for what could happen with future flight. And what we need to try and do is get through the situation to ensure that things aren't put into place to facilitate something that's never going to happen, basically. And that's part of my fear.
Like bringing down the airliner.
That we end up getting extremely restricted as a hobby and low rent commercial users because of something that might happen and because of something that, so I think the order it happens in is the fight that we need to try and win personally.
The problem with that is that we know that a great many of the regulations have nothing to do with safety. There's no safety justification for many of these regulations. I believe there are higher pressures coming from further up the political chain, which is driving much of this regulatory reform, because safety no longer stacks up as a justification for a lot of these regulations. So it becomes harder to introduce new regulations with safety as the driving force if we've already proven that safety isn't the driving force. They switch to national security.
I think you can see where those lines are drawn as well, and that's where I think the real battle lines need to be. But how we're how we're able to get there is a different thing. And how we're able to stop that is a different thing.
Fights, yeah. Well, that then, if you're going down that road, then that's proper advocacy, isn't it? That's effective,
100%.
honest
100%.
advocacy, not advocacy that isn't based on my business. And I'm just going to say, Chris would not do this. I know Chris not. Chris is going to sew up the sky because he needs to. And this is me trying to get to talk about his drone light show business. Anyway, he's going to sew this. He's going to make sure he's on all the committees, and he's going to sew up a bit of whatever the regulations is for his business.
I don't hate myself enough to be on one committee. Yes, alone all of them.
Well, but a lot of people do make sure they're on committees and do have the ear of people and do bend things, try to bend things their way. I suppose that applies in all things across life. Even the sewing circle probably has the same, and the WI definitely.
Those needles are sharp, you know.
Exactly.
And you should never share them.
Here's a hypothetical airspace safety conundrum for you. Okay, so I have a seaplane rating, so I can go and fly up in Scotland. I can land on pretty much any lock except Loch Katrine, which is the water supply for Glasgow, apparently. And so am I going to see like runway protection zones on every lock in Scotland?
Interestingly enough, here in New Zealand, we have a big lake. The entire thing is classified as a listed airfield because float planes operate from it. It is the largest lake in the Southern Hemisphere.
Wow. And is there a flight protection zone is there a runway protection zone, FPZ, around it?
No, well, it is because it says a listed airfield that there is basically you can't fly within 4 kilometres of it with a drone.
Wow.
And it's treated as a listed airfield. There is a plate in the AIP, I think, for it as well.
Yes,
wow.
But if you think how many small airfields there are in the UK, if they all had RPZs or flight restriction zones, talking farmers' fields here, the small airstrips, there'd be no way the amount of space you would lose would be incredible. But then I would also add, if you're going to do that, let's give it to all the BMFA clubs as well. So all the British model flying, all those model clubs, they deserve a flight restriction zone around them, because there's only 658 of them or so, not very many. But, you know, it take up a lot of airspace.
Interesting.
But also, to an extent, a lot of those small airfields deserve it as well, to help keep them alive and they keep their business case going, because people want to grab those for housing estates and other things. And I think we're missing. I actually had a chat. Where's his card? There we are. I was chatting to Farnborough with the CEO of the Light Aircraft Association and talking about how really the two worlds need to. This comes to integration and segregation. Actually, you know, the worlds need to start coming together in all of this. Low airspace users, lower airspace users of the private variety, be they drone drivers, glider drivers, microlight drivers, etc., have all got problems, and that Farnborough airspace grab is a fine example of that. And that was an American company bought Farnborough, didn't it? And said, we won't bother buying it unless you give us this great big chunk of airspace. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. So there's loads of airspace users. It's supposed to be equitable access to airspace for everybody, isn't it?
If I had a company, which I don't, and we manufactured or built or flew tethered drones, for example, and I wanted to be a pain in the arse to a microlight club, I could theoretically go and mount my tethered drones in the farmer's field just at the end of each runway of the microlight club. And I don't think legally there's anything the microlight club can do about it. So there is an awful lot of areas of flying activity that, you know, we have to find a balance that everybody works together from. And I think segregation is important when it's done at the, you know, when it's done sensibly and it benefits all. I did like Altitude Angel's pitch last week about, you know, nobody has to do anything; it's all done for them, and it's that exchange between all factors that I thought was really cool.
Did you all know that if you rolled back the rules to 2015, right? Gary's already laughing because I think he knows where I'm going with this. But if you flew sub-7 kilo drone, because it used to be the sub-7 and then over 7, you could fly sub-7 kilo anywhere in the UK, and there was nothing anyone could say to you at all to stop you, which does mean you could fly a model plane at the end of any big airport, and there was nothing they could do for you. There's nothing they could touch.
In front of a hurricane out of fate. Yeah. But anyway, let's go.
Anyway,
let's come on.
Let's go to this stuff.
That's a really interesting point, though, because if you were to do that, who would be endangering whose aircraft? So you're flying your sub-7 around, you know, just in the field to the end of somebody's runway with, you know, and they, you know, perfectly legally, and a 737's coming the other way, it might endanger your aircraft.
So, Chris, this is the important bit. The endangerment rules were always there. So reckless endangerment was the rule that kept you from doing that kind of thing. So that was the important bit. So while I kind of lead us down the garden path saying, well, sub-7 will fly anywhere. Actually, the rule 241 and 240 were there to protect manned aviation. However, the rules changed in 2015 when we got the RPZs and everything and the flight restriction zones. And to be honest, I do think it's quite a good idea to have them at most airfields, or most of the big ones at least. So I do think that. Anyway, can we talk about the cool stuff over here? I want to talk about this.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this drone light show that Chris has got, and it's Electric Air Shows, I believe, is the name of your new company, Chris. And
it is.
Well, there's one of the machines, and I'm sure we've all tried to read that barcode on the top of that, or that QR code on the top of that thing there. Let's just nerdy interest. Is that an RTK GPS on the top? Probably
it is,
isn't it?
It is indeed, yes. So it's so we started the company last year. We went through operational authorization. We got our OSC inspected, and that was fun. They came and watched us fly, and actually we flew we flew at Cardington, actually, at Bedford.
Oh yeah.
Because this is great intel. Cardington is in its own permanent danger area for the use of the Met Office, and the Met Office can fly balloons and UAVs, also UAS, up to 6,000 feet there, 24/7. And so we basically spoke to the Met Office and borrowed it. And the CIA were having a bit of a head scratch about 28 days notice and all of that, and they realized that actually, if you're in a permanent danger area, you don't need to give 28 days notice for a non-standard flight on SWAT. So we basically went through that.
Right,
yeah. So we went through that. We demonstrated to them, and we ticked all their boxes. We got through. We had 4 minor findings from our OSC, and that was it. And we got operational authorization. We've subsequently flown about 9 shows now for various clients doing various different things, from the Ukrainian flag through to messaging in the sky, wishing people a good night, through to Alton Towers and the fireworks display there, where we flew prior to the fireworks. And we did that for multiple nights and different shows, etc. So we're sort of focusing on the UK markets. Both myself and my business partner Ian, we lurked around the entertainment industry for a long time. So I kind of I spent the early 90s on tour with bands and stuff, and that's where I met Ian. He's been on tour ever since, and obviously COVID came along. He didn't have very much to do, so he sort of came on board, and we did a load of research, selected these drones, imported these drones, and have been flying them ever since. So we have a few hundred in the UK at the moment. We are looking to bring some more advancements in the next batch that we're expecting to come over. And yeah, so it's been a fascinating journey, shall we say. It's not been without the joys of 722E, and then trying to align 722E with 722A, etc. And it's trying to even the numbers don't align is just the most annoying thing in the world. So you've got one paragraph in our OSC that relates to 2 different 722 subdocuments, and it's all good fun anyway. But yeah, we got through. CIA were very pleasant, and it all happened reasonably quickly for us. So that was quite nice. So we have a test area up in Cumbria where we've been flying. The photo you can see is some of our fleet on the croquet lawn at our office, and occasionally we play croquet. But yeah, so it's a sort of a business that's taking off. I say we are just focusing on the UK. We're not looking at the Middle East. We're not looking at anywhere else in Europe at the moment. We're just focusing on our previous event clients from 20, 30 years ago, and looking to fly for them. So it's a small. It's a small operation, but it's got some good clients already, and we've done some good stuff. Interestingly enough, when we were flying at Alton Towers, we did have we had a rogue drone fly over there, and Alton Towers had a chat with the CIA about having the airspace changed over Alton Towers before they realised the implications of doing that, and because they were sick of people flying drones over the park, mainly in COVID actually. So there were lots of spooky closed theme park drone flights. So that's they were sort of not very happy about people flying drones near their roller coasters and stuff, and probably perhaps rightly so. But we did have one rogue drone come over, and our observers spotted it and dealt with, alerted us to the fact. But I think they realised that they were quite close to the fireworks, and they left at that point. It's sort of the risk of the fireworks going off was a big enough deterrent to remove them near at the right time. But yeah, so we've had lots of fun learning and flying, and the interesting thing I think is is what you can do with them, and we're only really scratching the surface on like 2D imaging, 3D imaging, etc. And some of the more funky geometric shapes are quite are becoming crowd pleasing. So I think you're going to see. I think drone light shows are going to be wowing people for a good few years yet, because not necessarily because of the technology and the drones themselves, but because of the imagery and the illusion that they can create in the sky. So I think it's really early days, and it's something that
I think I saw that you had an airliner and things like that. That was yours.
That's our partner in China. They have, they flew 3,051 drones in a display to take the world record for a while. That's subsequently been beaten by another Chinese company who've flown over 5,000 in one swarm. The key thing is that this is we're sticking to the UK because of the airspace. We know it, we understand it. We also understand the weather, and some of our competitors have just in the last few weeks come a bit unstuck with this. We have some great weather assets that both space weather and terrestrial weather that we look to deploy. So we're sort of giving our clients a good briefing a long way out as the likelihood of being able to fly for them. So it will it's one of those things where weather is significant. It is when you've got several hundred of them up there. When the wind gets up, even with RTK, it's it does become a.
I was going to ask you what the wind limits are, the operational limits.
So we're up to about 17, 18 miles an hour. 8-9 meters a second off the top of my head. So it's not great, and it's not great, and we won't fly if we reach that. When we did the demo to the CAA, we were right on the limit, just underneath. But it was like that was our best performance test that we did in windy conditions, and they all flew very well, and they came back and they did land very well. So the one thing that we have got from the system is pretty good accuracy.
You should use delivery drones. They're flying any weather.
Apparently so.
A quick question. We know that the logistics to put one of these things in the air is, let's just say, challenging. How does the number of drones in the air influence the logistics, besides being twice the work, 3 times the work, depending if doubling the number of drones from, say, 500 to 1,000, is it twice the work or 3 times the work?
The deployment and the number is a linear thing, but I've explained it to clients in the past that if you've got 100 drones, you can do 8-bit graphics, computer graphics from the 1980s. So you can play early forms of asteroids and Pac-Man and Pong. If you've got 200 drones, you suddenly start moving up to like 16-bit graphics of the 90s, and you can do Sonic the Hedgehog and things like that. And then you get up to 300 drones, you can start to get into 24-bit graphics and sort of Call of Duty kind of imagery kind of thing. So and then above that, you're getting onto QR code size, bringing it up into the modern day. In terms of the logistics of, we have, as I say, we have a trick up our sleeve that we will hopefully be demonstrating later this year with regards how we deal with sheer quantities of drones. But at the moment, the sterile ground that we have to ensure to actually launch is a function of the ground area and the flight volume. So if we've got a 100 meter by 100 meter field for argument's sake, for 100 drones, then you're going to need another one of those for 200 drones, and therefore your flight volume, your sterile area will increase accordingly. So we say we have some technology advances that we're bringing later this year, which will break that sort of linear scale of land area that you need to launch off. But we've had some people phone us up and say, oh yes, come do this Sonnet Lumiere, this stately home, and we've looked at it and just went, there's nowhere to launch from. So, yeah, but your competitors tell us they can do it. So, well, that's good for them, but that's not good for us. And really, it's a case of, every job is, it has to have that, it has to have, a decent amount of sort of logistics prep on it, and it has to have a decent launch and landing site. We both come from, the concert industry. I can't see yet. I can't see drones appearing over the top of concert festival roofs, etc. And when we look at, we've spoken to people about festivals and doing drone light shows at 1 o'clock in the morning at a festival and having it as a silent disco, etc. But the difficulty is you need that sterile area, and you need to ensure that the audience are far enough away. So for Alton Towers, the audience are one side of a lake, and then there's the foreground up to the building themselves, and the foreground up to the building is where the fireworks go off from. So we have a risk from them, and then we we actually take off from inside the ruins of Alton Towers itself. So it's it is all mapped out and well thought out, such that timing wise we don't interfere with the fireworks, etc. But
where's the operator then? If they're inside the building and going from inside, one thing is the radio wise, the RF wise.
Well, the ruins are, effectively it's like being inside the battlements of a castle. So we're inside, down. We're protected from the public by the fact that we're inside the castle and they're all outside.
So the whole display is happening within the footprint of the ruins. Am I thinking to this correctly? I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And before I drop the picture down, can I just ask a quick question about the picture? And I'll drop the picture down because people are moaning about it. Is it USB charging then?
No.
So what's that USB for then?
That USB is for getting a flight log out of the aircraft. The aircraft comes in two pieces: the top section, which has got the GPS and the motors, and then the bottom section where you see the what we affectionately call a toilet seat. Because if you could see that full on, it does look a bit like a toilet seat. The light unit itself, and it's got an intelligent battery all as one, which slides into the underside of the drone. The QR code on the top is so that we have battery management and aircraft management software, so we can basically ensure that we know which battery went into which drone, and we've got the flight plan, flight life, etc. of both the battery and the drone itself. So there you go.
Well, that must be a huge amount of the admin is just running the batteries, charging them, and that must be.
We log every battery on every charge, and we log every inspection of every aircraft, as you'd expect. But we just try to do that so in a manner that is as efficient as possible, and trying to use technology to reduce the laboriousness of repetition of checks, etc.
So that means that you must have some already some numbers about failure rates of those drones or batteries. Are those numbers manageable? So if you go to a show with 100 drones, what is the overhead that you have to carry? 10%, 5%?
I would say 1 or 2%. The units are still very young for a start, so we haven't got that aging issue just yet. The only issues we've really had are when I tried to take over control of one of them in ATI mode and float into a hedge, but that's down to my ATI piloting skills with this particular aircraft. But we haven't lost a drone in all of our shows yet. I'm sure there will become, some incident may happen in the future, but I can safely say that we bar me flying in ATI in a recovery, demonstrating the recovery mode, we haven't had any other incidents as such.
So that means that one could theoretically pick up a drone as master and have fly it manually and have all the others following it.
There are a number of things. Somebody did ask, what fail safes do we have? Obviously, we can hit return to home, and the drones will try and work it out for themselves and get back to their landing slots. But you'll all have seen the videos of the drone night shows with all of the drones going off in different layers up into the sky. Obviously, if you hit return to home as an emergency, the drones in the presentation in the sky will obviously be in not a guaranteed position to immediately retake the position for landing. So there is some issues with that. But we can stop the show, we can pause it, we can return to home everything. Alternatively, if we see that we've got one unit that's specifically having issues, we can call that one back to home, or we can switch that. We can send it the signal to go over to put it into ATI mode basically and fly it back manually, which is say how I managed to put one in the hedge. But we could theoretically, and I'm not suggesting we do this, put the entire swarm into ATI mode and then try and fly the whole thing back down, which would be probably quite expensive in damage.
I want to see that. They make a great video.
Well, if I'm ever stupid enough to do it, I do hope that we'll have it on video, but it will be hard hats to the ready kind of thing. So it's one of those things where there are a number of fail-safe mechanisms that we have. You've got to remember this is all autonomous flight. at this stage. So they are all following a predetermined timed pattern. So it's all time coded. They will be in a certain location at a certain time and doing their thing. And it looks pretty good. And the timing, the timing system works really well on it. And the RTK is pretty impressive. The level of accuracy it can build to.
Do you worry about the overseas? What about the overseas events where obviously someone has disrupted GPS signal for fun and drones have gone all awry and fallen out of the sky? And it's happened a couple of times, I think, in places like China or roundabouts. Do you have any contingencies for that sort of thing?
Well, we have, let's say, it all depends on the RTK, because even if you knock the GPS out, the RTK assist on the ground is still giving you some level. So if you knock the GPS out in the sky, it depends how you're doing. If it's a point and shoot GPS jammer, or as I say, the nice thing about using Alton Towers is because effectively we're in the keep of a castle on the grounds inside. So it's very hard to actually knock out the GPS for us on the ground. So we keep maintaining the RTK signal from the ground up. And so we do have some resilience to that, but there will come a day when when enough GPS jammers are out there being used that there will be issues. I know. So the trouble is mainly the domino effect, that when you've got one aircraft that goes out, I mean, our software tells us, whether or not we've got timing issues, whether or not we've got flight issues. But you only need one there to sit there and go, oh, actually, I've got some errors. I'm just going to hang on here, and for another one to then go into that, and then that's when you've got collisions in the sky, and if those two happen to be at the top of a column of them, they're going to bring the lot down. So there is that there is that level of worry that we go through in each flight.
And what's Mark asking here? There's that one. Forward is basically a wireless charger that's switched on way before they take off. I guess that's to get a GPS fix and things like that, or just stand by, I suppose.
The problem is, do you have to? So here's the question, Chris. Do you have to power them all up individually, go around one by one, and it sits there, and each one you have to go and touch and turn it on?
Yeah, what we do is put the batteries in, do a visual flight check, and then basically we go around, we power them all on, and they go and sit there and stand by. So they're just there listening out for a command. It's a very low power radio signal, and then when we're ready, we awaken them all when we're getting close to flight time, and then when we're ready to go, then basically we're just doing a systems check with them, and the command is sent, and they go off and do their time code.
What does an inductive charging pad do to the compass calibration, I wonder?
We don't have a charging pad system.
No, I think your competitors, someone was saying in the comments. Yeah.
Some people do, some people don't. It all depends on the actual make and design of the drone as to whether or not you're charging it from the ground. So,
well, Andy's got a very good point. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that at all, as long as there's no. Obviously, you'd have to hide all your proprietary bits, but that would be fun. That would be fun to join in.
Yeah.
And see behind.
There would be an awful lot of boring repetition on it.
Just like this stream.
Just exactly.
And current duration
Chris,
of a flight show is about what, half of the flight time of the drone?
No, so we look to fly for between 12 and 15 minutes, and the battery life on them is like 25. So you've got that, and actually the point about them being sat there in standby is that it's a very low power radio signal that we're just keeping alive, which then relays and starts the machines up as such. Aren't most light shows at night to avoid? Sorry, I missed that.
It's all RTK, so they're all RTK, so it's GPS. Yeah, it's all they what it is. It's pre-planned, isn't it, Chris? So each drone goes to a certain waypoint via the RTK, which gives you about 25 centimeter resolution or less.
No, it will give you 7 centimeters, and it will give you 7 centimeters in all axes, basically. So it is ridiculously accurate. What tends to happen is if you've got a lot of cross sky moves, so if you're rotating a circle, for example, on its y-axis, on the vertical axis, you've obviously got the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock points of the circle are going to be traveling much faster and much further than the 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock, which are virtually stationary. And when you've got that differential movement as such, that's when you start to get the timing errors and also the positional errors in the sky. Then as the show moves on, the error gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So the way to test it is to do a drone light show where you're putting text up in the sky at the beginning, and then have a look at and do the same at the end. So you put text at the end, and then look at the accuracy of the pixels spelling out letters at the end compared to the beginning, and then you'll.
I was going to. So it's not correcting. It's not going. Hang on, kids. This has gone a little bit awry. Let's correct the next one.
All depends what it's doing in the sky. So say if it's that circle going around, the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock pixels are absolutely hacking it around there, and they have to correct and stop, and every time they try and correct and stop, there's a room for error. And if they're moving straight again, they will correct, but they have to basically get the RTK assist signal in time for that correction to be affected. So they need to be ideally stationary at that point. So the pixels that move the fastest are always going to pick up the largest amount of error over time.
Interesting.
So then do you consider what the show looks like in order to correct for, go for smoother moves after from rapid moves or something to start correcting errors?
There's lots of things. There's lots of tricks that people, and this is what I was saying about, we're still going to be amazed. Creative people will come up with creative solutions that will still blow your mind in 3 to 5 years. So, for example, if you want the RTK to assist and get everything back into the precision that you really want, obviously just doing a chase of the lights going around a circle, for example, and holding the circle still in the sky, it gives you enough time for the RTK basically to for your calibration in terms of your XYZ movement to come back in. If you keep that circle going around, eventually it's going to be a bit of a wobbly circle as it goes around. It's still going to be safe because we work on the grounds of we're 1.5 meter footballs in the sky. The LEDs in the center are 1.5 meter radius football, and we 1.5 meter diameter football, and you've basically got to keep those footballs from bouncing into each other. And the big
question: what does it cost, or is it free?
What, the drone light show? Oh, it's always free down under, I believe. So Southern Hemisphere, it's all free down there because gravity does different things in the Southern Hemisphere, doesn't it? So
exactly.
How much does it cost? That's a good question. We don't use drone show software, who are the sort of software end out of Latvia that power an awful lot of European shows. We don't use them. We use bespoke software. But when we were doing the research on this, the comedy salespeople are saying that you should be selling a drone light show at $500 per drone per show, which
wow,
yeah. Absolutely. And then about 12 months later, that was down to $300 per drone per show. And I don't honestly believe that is sustainable. So it is. I'm not going to give you exact figures, but it's less than that. And I think realistically, it's going to be brokered per company per client at the end of the day. Yeah. So we've got a client who has put a repeat booking in with us, which is great. And they're sort of they're looking to fix their cost with inflation, etc. And I suspect that that's probably lower than the going market rates, but we've known these guys and worked with these guys for ages, and they're good payers, and we're quite happy with that fee. So I would say that if you looked at work, if my answer to that question would be sub $300 per drone per show. And obviously, if I'm there for 4 nights doing the same show, 4 nights, I'm not obviously going to there's nothing I want to do more in my life than roll out 300 drones every night for 4 nights and put 300 batteries in those drones every night, and then take them out and put them on charge every night. So bar the boredom of repetition, there's a lot of time goes into the planning, a lot of time goes into the design, but the actual execution, it tends to be a very repetitive thing.
So you only have to be cheaper than fireworks, or as good as same price.
I was going to ask, how was it compared to a big firework display, which is not going to be repeated exactly the same every night?
A big fireworks display, £2,000 to £3,000 per minute, I think, and
wow.
We're not. We're more expensive than that, depending on how many minutes you go for, obviously. But these are complementing things. And everyone said, "Oh, we're always going to replace fireworks." And so I don't really see that, because
it's actually more fun to watch drones getting shot down by fireworks, isn't it?
Do you know what? we did one show where we put up a flag, and the we had segregated airspace. We had from the fireworks, and and I've got one image where the flag is flying, and then we've got an 8-inch mortar shell exploding over the top of it, and it just looks incredible. But the two things are very, very different and have to be planned incredibly carefully to ensure that one doesn't affect the other as such. So we had some firework fallout in the drone takeoff zone, but it's very hard to tell the fireworks guys, could you move the wind around so that the fallout doesn't quite land in our takeoff space. There's a lot of industry sort of working together required for it, but I think they are two very different things. And one of our clients is using the drone light show to introduce the fireworks show. It gets people's attention. It does weird and funky things. Then we did a countdown for Alton Towers. We had the entire 30,000 people at Alton Towers counting down with the drones doing a number clock in the sky. It got down to 0. Guess what? The drone lights went out, came down, landed very quickly, and off went the fireworks. And it looked a very slick choreographed thing, and the audience loved it. But we're not going to be trying to complement the fireworks displays with drones because of the sterile area we need to operate in and the flight volume that we need to operate in. And I think it's a complementary thing. I think you'll probably
put some sparklers on your drones. That look lovely.
Oh, I saw that video. I saw that video some time back where somebody put some Roman candles on a drone and flying them around. It's there are hybrid systems out there. I know of a company in the Middle East who've had lots of fun with putting fireworks on drones. Should we say lots of costly fun as well? But I didn't. I wasn't there to see it, but I certainly saw some photos which were which did make me smirk a little bit. But
cheap batteries and poor soldering will give the same effect every time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, overcharging and all that sort
I
of thing.
think it's an obvious question, but do the LEDs? So you have RGB LEDs on the drones, right?
Yeah.
Are they individually? Can they be individually addressed per drone during the show?
Absolutely. So we have, each drone has got an IP address, so we can talk to the IP address and we can control the RGB LED remotely. It's something that we're working on at the moment. We don't. It's a pre-programmed, say, time code that they fly to, and the drone's LED color is dictated to by that. But we are looking at having live link up to be able to stream the RGB LED color.
So basically,
who's going to use?
We could imitate fireworks if we put the drones in the right position and make the drones light up.
Absolutely.
Use them as a raster. Yeah.
There was a Spanish company did it. I saw on LinkedIn. I think only yesterday actually. They
El Cheapo.
Some really nice. Thank you. Some really nice looking sort of flower petal sort of firework imitations with them. And so I'm more of the sort of the 1960s swirl sort of psychedelia with drones, which is
You're so old.
I know,
So
it looks
old.
so good.
Just terrible. Yeah, just amazing. Who's going to be the first one to use black LEDs for daytime displays?
Well, just use really bright LEDs. We've flown test flights in the day, and when we demonstrated to the CAA, none of the CAA could not. The CAA didn't turn around to us and say, "We can't actually work out what the drone image is trying
That's
to say."
the UK. It's always dull over there, isn't it?
Well, it's just dull skies, bright LEDs, and in your own danger area. It's happy
I wonder
days.
how long that danger area will be, because they're busy building houses all over that airfield, aren't they? Sadly,
they have built some houses, but those houses are to the north of the hangars. So
they're on the other, because the Met Office is over the fence, isn't it? From they're sheds. They're sheds, young man. Airships don't live in hangars. They're sheds.
You're right.
Yes.
Just one more crazy question.
Yes, absolutely.
So the payload is only the LEDs. Could the drones take over with some lasers so that they could do a laser light
behind the eyes of the crowd
in the air?
Well, now I'm one of the stalwart UK drone sellers who I speak to occasionally. I know that they've been looking at putting all manner of a laser kit on drones. I also, we've played with the idea of using the drones to mount mirrors on, which and then basically reflecting the laser off the mirror. And obviously with 7 centimeter precision, you just increase the size of the mirror, and then you can do some funky things with the reflecting laser beams off them. However, I've not tried that, and if you're watching from the CAA, I will be speaking to you before I try that.
I put a laser on my drone back in 2016. Put a video up. You can see for everyone to see. 2 lasers actually. 2 lasers on one drone.
Though, are you? You're not in the UK. The warm fuzzy CAA feeling.
The question
but that was 2016. We didn't have the same rules then.
The question is the current LEDs payload replaceable by something else?
No, on these it's fixed. On these specific drones, it's fixed. But because it's a slide-in battery, and the toilet seat of LED sits underneath the battery. It is. It would be possible to retrofit it, but it would be a modification that the manufacturer would have to do, and then would have to go through the CAA risk management process and updating our OSC accordingly. But so yes, it is possible, but we have no plans for that at the moment.
Okay. So you must have worked pretty closely with the manufacturers if you have your own software suite, or do they have an SDK that you got a use?
No, it's their software. It's their software suite. Basically, it's their software suite translated into English with a few extras. So
that's a good honest answer. Good for you.
Hey,
So what's bizarre with the CAA and doing test flights? You're not allowed to fly the swarm at all, are you? Before the CAA come and assess you, which is absolutely crazy.
No, you're not. You terrible people.
No, you can't do it. Quite. It's bizarre. So until you actually got the Cap 722E is really weird, and so is the CAA rule on this, because they say you can do everything, but you can't press the launch button. So you can do all your testing, but you're not allowed to push that launch button ever before you've got CAA there to do the flight test.
We were absolutely so beside ourselves happy that the first time we pressed the launch button with the CAA there, everything flew to plan.
Well, of course it did, because you prepared so well. I mean,
we
the reason.
Prepared so well because we have a croquet lawn that's surrounded by like 120-foot high trees, and so we were very careful, and of course we just put bits of string on each drone so that it was attached to the ground at all times. So,
so what are they signing off here? One person operation of multiple aircraft. What are they signing off when they do that?
Well, it's effectively that. It's one person is responsible for multiple aircraft operating autonomously. That's the key thing. So
what's the requirement for stopping the flight? What do they expect to happen, and how long should it take? Is that part of the requirement?
How long should it take is not specified, and I think that would be because it would be down to the manufacturer, the system performance as such. But yes, we have to have the ability to we have to demonstrate the ability to bring one home, to bring multiple home, to bring the whole fleet home. There is the license effectively. Well, it's not license, authorization is for that. Is for a qualified pilot who has done all the training to effectively be in control of hundreds of autonomous aircraft flying in the same airspace.
And I guess that's on a screen rather than being on a switch on a controller, or multiple switches on your ground control station.
So it's on a screen, but we have the ability to, from the laptop screen, we can select any unit and hand it over to a standard Frisky Tyrannus controller and bring it down that way.
Are these drones all individually registered?
They all carry our operator ID, and the barcode, the QR code on the top, gives us the MAC address of the Ethernet PHY inside, and also the date of manufacture, and all of that comes up from our QR code. So,
the next question that Bruce is going to make is: do they have all remote IDs?
Doesn't apply in the UK.
Just going off track a bit. I did wonder. Do you think the RAF have got an operator ID from the CAA? Do Just wondered, does the military actually have? Because they must
No.
have
From everything.
They
They're
don't
exempt from
No.
everything. They're a law unto
No,
themselves. The
'cause
government's
they're flying the military authorization, weren't they?
Yeah, it's MAA, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
They had that recent swarm test thing that they did, and they, in the press release of that, they said they gave themselves permission, basically.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah,
I'm just
it's the
idle
MAA.
curiosity. Idle curiosity.
Because when that was funny enough, I was thinking about it today because of one of the only airprox incidents that was properly investigated in England was the Desert Hawk and we'll say it was a Lynx, whatever helicopter it was, on Salisbury Plain years ago. They had a meeting of minds almost, and they got properly investigated. But that was all very clearly stated to be under MAA.
Right.
So yeah, back
Right.
in the
So we
day.
need HAA for the hobby, eh?
Yeah, if you just as long as you chuck letters in, and as I've said it on this before, if anything changes its acronym enough times, then in fact, this can come round. In fact, because we've been going an hour and a half, we need to come back, and because Chris gave us a very full, and I'm looking forward to the live stream where we're sat on his shoulder watching what's going on, and we'll be the judges of whether it's boring or not.
I'll try and arrange for a client to do it at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night for you.
There you go. Yeah, of course you will. Yeah, of course you will.
Thank you. With the CUS News logo in the sky as well, please.
Absolutely.
It can then, be used as Gary's introduction.
Sean.
And guys, we need to ask him.
So one thing I will just close with on that on the subject. We are looking because we're doing some funky stuff with the technology. We are looking and talking to the military, and we are talking to counter UAS and police organisations for actually doing saturation testing. So we have the ability to put hundreds of these things up in a pattern and a formation. And if you're flogging counter UAS kit, and you want to do a really cool demonstrator, then these things are about the size of a Mavic, and happy days, we've got hundreds of them. So we are looking for other should we say revenue opportunities with the military as we speak. But
well, I think there ought to be a sort of semi-autonomous aggressor squadron stood up to do exactly that for all these claims, to go and fly it.
Yeah,
he's the route. Go and aggress Heathrow. Go and aggress. Obviously you have to tell someone there you're going to do it, and all that sort of a thing.
This is definitely one case where seeking permission probably is more advisable than asking, than asking for forgiveness afterwards.
But I mean, there should be an independent unit, because most of these counter US things, as we've said so many times, are nothing more.
Oh, they got to him.
His power's gone, man. He's shut down.
You start talking about the CUS and the CUS, the CUS hackers come straight into.
He's back.
Into YouTube.
That's amazing. How did I was giving away the secret of my fishing lure and ESP32 anti-drone system, and it cut me off straight away. That's amazing, isn't it? But that's basically what it is, isn't it?
It is.
Oh my God. Yeah.
TLAs for the win, then, Gary. You were going to say TLAs for the win.
Yeah.
Was I?
You're going up to. But sure, I see your TLA and I raise your next TLA. Extended through that.
But the where I was going to take this back round to was nuts technology that Chris. It was a brilliant question. There's utter bullshit that we've seen over the years, and I think for me, and I've forgotten the name of the thing now. What was that drone that you could chuck off a boat, throw off a waterfall, chuck off?
The Lily drone.
Lily drone. I think that was the best. That was peak for me. Peak. Well, what a funny thing. Anyone else got any ideas on that? No one's going.
Well, I suppose the GoPro Karma has to go down in history as a failure and a big
down,
one.
Full stop.
They go down, yes.
Go down.
Yeah, so it's sort of hovered around multi-rotors, really, hasn't it? Most of the hubris. And funnily enough, today in South Africa, there's a request for purchase for. Our army wants something, and they're not telling what it is. But the battery requirements and charging requirements so exact, and the weight of the thing is so exact that it's already been sold. Whatever it is, somebody's come around and knocked on the door, and the RFP's gone out, and it's that's plainly So nonsense goes on with multi-rotors. Yeah. Oh, there was a Mick Malloy with his electric cars in Australia has seen it, Karma. And now what have you got there?
A duly certified C rating class drone with all the paperwork issued by the manufacturer.
Is that an M30?
No, the M3, the Mavic 3.
Very good. Yeah, well, we don't care about
Fully
that, do we?
certified by the manufacturer as a C-class rating.
Just rub it in. Just rub it in. That's fine. You carry on.
Grenada.
Hey,
Wow.
guys.
What a place to be watching from. Grenada. I'm going to have to go and look on my map to go and remember where that is. Hello,
Is it that country that Ukraine's dropping from drones?
Could be. It could be.
Yeah,
Look,
come on,
an hour and
please.
35. This has been a great one. Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sean. I think we almost made sense at the beginning, which we won't do again. But dear viewer, wherever you are, even in Grenada, look after yourselves. We'll see you again 2100 GMT next week when Chris is arranging a drone light show with Sean's logo, XJet's logo, everyone's logo. It's gonna be fantastic.
On the client's invoice though.
On the client's invoice in central London.
I honestly could do that, but I happen to know that we were looking at test flying, and I know that the weather is absolutely crap over the UK for the next 10 days. So no, I doubt very many drone light shows are going to be flying because yet again the British weather has hampered us. So there you go.
If you mention my name, they'll withdraw your permission.
One final question. So what, Chris? One final question. So what happens if you can't fly? Then what actually happens? Because let's say the wind just. What actually happens?
You pass out the torches, don't you? And everyone sort of runs around with the torches.
Yeah, but if you can't fly, what do you do with the client?
Well, it's part of the contract with the client. Is that, we have a contingency fee that we charge the client if we can't fly. And so, hang on a second. I just let the dog out a second ago. He's barking, waking the neighbours up. So give us a sec.
Oh, that makes sense. Because I was wondering
what you said about it now.
That was a really interesting presentation, and actually one of the most practical explanations of light shows that I've heard in a very long time. Actually, you get a lot of the people and they just won't talk about anything. So it was.
There's no place for that here.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
I will say it's still day one as far as I'm concerned, and I think the technology can get better. I think the fleet that we've invested in is going to get superseded in the next 18 months to 2 years. But as I said, I still think that in 3 to 5 years, there's going to be some creative talent is going to design stuff in the sky that is going to blow your mind. Because it's not all about putting text up there or shapes or Christmas trees or, it's about doing the stuff like the Chinese are doing, like recreating 3D models of aircraft and flying them through the sky and stuff like that. It's just, the sky's the limit.
Capital investment must be quite high. I mean, you must have spent a fortune buying all this stuff. Are you going to be able to recover that in a reasonable time frame?
Yeah, definitely. We're confident that that we are that the company will be profitable eventually. Eventually, do.
So summertime is obviously, and the living will be easy, but that must be the time it's going to have your peak use, isn't it?
Well, you need the trouble with summer is you got the longer night, and of course at an event. Yeah. If you've got a family event and it's the middle of the summer, then you're not getting dark till 11:30. Most of the kids have gone to bed. It becomes very bespoke. We have some discussions quite crazily with piggybacking on air shows and providing where you've got air shows on for multiple nights, then providing something in the between the Friday and the Saturday night up in the sky to just to entertain people. So there are all manner of things, but of course the one advantage that we have is we've got really bright LEDs. So actually, when it gets to twilight, and in fact, some of the Ukraine stuff that we did, we flew in daylight, going into dusk, and actually the imagery that we got off that was even better than doing it at night. So with a pitch black sky. So, but weather, time, I think the British climate is going to be very challenging. If I'm honest, if you look at the whole year and you look at what days you can fly and the weather, and I say that pretty much the whole of January's been out for us. So it's one of those things. well, I think we're really lucky that we've got some, a couple of established clients, and we've got future bookings, etc. So we know we've got those revenues coming in, and we're able to build a business on this. But
and also you've got your flying head. You fly your seaplanes and stuff like that. And as you know, if you've got time to spare, go by air. You'll be very aware that weather is it can be even for GA flying, weather's quite a big issue. And I think that we'll just look at all that again. We're going to go on too long again. But you see in the socials, you see people going, "Well, our windy's too windy," and then they're showing what the UAV forecast, and it's saying like 40 knots and lashing with rain, and go, can we fly in this? It's like
drone delivery companies can do it, so anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Well, and there was when we flew for the CIA, there was a bit of that, because that was the windiest flight, and we were looking at each other going, okay, so according to the manufacturer, this is fine, and they've flown in it, and it's fine, and we obviously pressed the launch button for the first time in front of the CIA, and in some pretty strong winds, and it was you're all aware of the hangar wind when flying drones, and hangar wind and the effect it has. Well, obviously Cardington sheds, hangars, obviously, the shed wind off the side of the sheds at Cardington, was pretty impressive. And as I say, they all flew there and they all came back fine. But the British climate is, we look at it, the maximum number of shows we're planning on doing per year fits in with the British climate. But there will be disappointed customers, there will be disappointed kiddies, but fireworks can still go up in the rain.
Those sheds are quite extraordinary. If you're somewhere in the world and you don't really, when they stand in the fields in Bedfordshire and stand there and you're a bit of a distance away from them, they look big. They look big. But then when you get up to them or go in them, it's like, oh my hat! I've flown inside them. But anyway, in a balloon.
And this is where the term "a shed load of something" comes from. It's indicating.
Well, I do believe, and somebody in the comments might be able to correct me. What's that?
Well, I said so. It must be true.
Yeah, he said so. Yeah. It's Bruce. Come on.
So I was last in there. I was last in there when Airlander was in there. Before it flew and then fell over, and it was just it was somebody it was like they got half of one of the sheds for Airlander, just half of one of the sheds, and got Airlander in the back half of it. I wasn't quite prepared for the size of Airlander, but I did know how big the sheds were. But somebody just said, when you go through that door, it's the largest version of Nicki Minaj's backside you've ever seen. And there was
yes.
It's just
it's maybe the only place we have left to fly soon, inside one of those sheds.
Well, we did wonder whether or not we could, with some clever RTK rebroadcasting, whether or not we could actually do rehearsals in there for the Drone Night Show. So, because they won't see the sky.
Fly. They have free flight competitions in there. That's how big they are.
But if you're testing, if you are testing drones out, and you speak to the Met Office nicely, it's a permanent danger area up to 6,000 feet for any special flight with a drone, you do not have to give 28 days notice. So,
just don't have to bring a pack of the chocolate hobnobs. I mean, hobnobs in itself probably wouldn't be enough.
Well, they've got those posh caramel ones now as well. So it's caramel.
Right, they'd have to be.
That normally wins people over. Yeah. Anyway, listen, I've got a scoop.
So have I. I said we were going. Wherever you are in the world, dear viewer, take care. Look after yourselves. 21 next week. Cheers, chaps. Bye-bye. One button, two button. Cheers all.